After failing the college entrance exam, I was kidnapped by thugs to a barn/outbuilding, assaulted and accused of misconduct. The next day, David Chin, my boyfriend of many years and an urban youth relocated to rural areas, broke off our engagement and immediately obtained his marriage license with Jessica Miller, a female soldier who had just arrived. The town/community was abuzz with gossip. My mother, who had raised me alone, was overwhelmed by grief and rage and collapsed in bed. In my despair, Robert Davis, Commander Davis, the new commander, came to my house with the traditional wedding gifts, sewing machine, bicycle, watch, and radio, to propose marriage. He said he was willing to marry me and make me his commander's wife. I was touched by his appearance, like a light illuminating my life, and immediately accepted. For 4 years after we married, our marriage was one of mutual respect. But when I went to the military base/barracks to bring him a lunchbox 3 months into my pregnancy, I unexpectedly overheard his conversation with Mayor John. Robert, Mayor John said, "You had me switch Sarah's acceptance letter for Jessica's back then, so she and David Chin wouldn't end up together. But why did you still find someone to assault her? You know how important a woman's reputation is." After a silence, I heard Robert Davis speak. "I had no choice. Only by losing her good name could David Chin completely give up. After all, I couldn't bear the slightest possibility of Jessica being hurt." Separated by a wall, I saw Mayor John shake his head, looking somewhat distressed. "But what you did to Sarah was too cruel. She didn't get to go to college, she's doing the hardest work at the riverfront mill, and sometimes people still call her a /tramp/forward/back/loose woman /. Aren't you afraid she'll find out one day?" Before he could finish, Robert Davis's low voice interrupted, "She won't find out. I married her, intending to spend the rest of my life making amends. Even getting her pregnant was intentional on my part. After all, her mother's stroke back then was caused by the rumors I had spread." Hearing this, the lunchbox in my hand nearly fell to the ground. I hurried to the stairwell. My trembling fingers touched my slightly swollen belly, and tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. I never dreamed that the person who had saved me from my suffering was actually the culprit who pushed me into the abyss. And my marriage and the child in my belly, which I had been so proud of, were merely compensation given out of his guilt. In his eyes, my reputation was insignificant compared to Jessica Miller's happiness. Thinking of my mother holding my hand and Robert's hand on her deathbed, telling us to have a good life together, my stomach couldn't help but churn. Just as I was leaning against the wall, vomiting, Robert Davis's anxious voice came from behind me. Sarah, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" He took a step towards me and accidentally knocked over the lunchbox, spilling hot sauce onto his hand. But he didn't seem to care, instead carefully holding me in his arms, his voice tinged with guilt. "It's all my fault. I was in a hurry leaving this morning and forgot my lunchbox, making you come all this way. Is it too hot on the way? Are you a little heat stroke? Come sit in my barracks." With that, he quickly picked me up and placed me on the bed. His movements were as full of tenderness as before, but I could no longer feel his warmth. My eyes read. I didn't speak. Robert Davis thought I was unwell and went to the clinic/health center to get ginger tea, while I began to look around. After we got married, he often said the military base/barracks was strict and we needed to keep our distance, so I had never been to his barracks before. Just as I was trying to find a clue, a pink notebook/journal on the bookshelf caught my eye. Robert Davis was usually very serious and would absolutely not low bright/flashy colors around him. Moreover, it was clear from a glance that this notebook had been frequently read. The pages were already yellowing. A thought ignited in my mind. I opened the notebook, and indeed, what greeted me were love letters, neatly arranged with numbers. I flipped through them, all 999 of them. Each one began with "To the brightest moon in my heart." The very first letter was written in the days immediately after we were married. I was suffering from mental exhaustion due to the kidnapping and couldn't sleep all night, while he, claiming to have military business, came here to write about his longing for Jessica Miller. The man's short, powerful words were filled with restrained yet deep love. The letters also mentioned that they had been neighbors and grown up together. They were separated for several years due to policy changes and were only able to meet again when he came to the countryside. Remembering the past few years, Robert Davis always took leave during the summer and winter holidays to go to the capital city for a while. And all the ration stamps we had saved at home completely disappeared on those days. All that was left for me were scraps of cloth and cornbread/biscuits. In addition, the back of the notebook contained many photos, all of Jessica Miller. From 8 to 18, from a girl to a young woman. All were treasured and recorded by Robert Davis. There were also many photos of the two of them together. Without exception, Robert Davis's gaze was always directed at Jessica Miller. As for me, after we got married, aside from our wedding photo, whenever I suggested going to the photo studio to take pictures, Robert Davis always refused, saying he didn't like taking photos. It turned out he didn't dislike taking pictures, it was just that the person in the picture wasn't the right one. Until I saw the photo at the very bottom, showing Jessica Miller smiling radiantly in front of Qingbei University, while Robert Davis looked at her with a doting expression, holding an acceptance letter in his hand. I stared intently at the university in the photo. That spot should have been mine, but they had stolen it just like that. At this moment, footsteps echoed from the corridor, and I quickly put the notebook back. But as I stood up, tears fell again. Robert Davis came in and saw, quickly put down the cup, and hugged me. "Sarah, why are you crying? Are you not feeling well? I'll be so worried about you." I looked up at Robert Davis, trying to catch even the slightest hint of deceit on his face. However, there was none. He looked completely sincere. It turned out love could also be faked. But I no longer cared for it. Pushing him away subtly, I made up a lie. "Nothing, just some morning sickness. I'll go back now, you take your time eating." With that, ignoring his surprised look, I turned and left. On the way back, I went to the community center and signed up for the trip to the High Plains 5 days later. For the rest of my life, I would take my child to live on that vast land. As for Robert Davis, since you love her so much, I will grant your wish. The next morning, Robert Davis, as usual, went out and bought sweet oatmeal. After only a few bites, he said he had urgent military business and left. I looked at the oatmeal in the bowl and couldn't help but smile bitterly. I had once thought he loved sweet things and had always gone along with it. Only after seeing what was written in the notebook yesterday did I realize that it was what Jessica Miller liked to eat. And I had stated countless times that I preferred savory, but he never remembered. After dumping the oatmeal from the bowl into the sink, I got up and went to the county clerk's office. When the staff told me about the latest policy enacted at the beginning of the year, stating that a marriage could be dissolved as long as both parties signed the divorce agreement, I breathed a sigh of relief. I took the agreement and prepared to go to the military base/barracks to find Robert Davis. Suddenly, I remembered that the marriage certificate was at the old house, so I turned around and went there first. Unexpectedly, as soon as I entered the courtyard, I heard the wives sitting in the yard discussing animatedly. "Have you heard? Jessica Miller broke up with David Chen after college, and Commander Davis rushed to pick her up. If you ask me, they're a perfect match, a commander and a college graduate, childhood sweethearts, growing up together. Who knew Commander Davis would marry a woman who had been wronged? I feel so bad for him." Seeing me out of the corner of their eyes, everyone fell silent, their gazes filled with disdain. But this time, I didn't walk with my head down, instead, I held my head high. As my hand reached for the doorknob, I heard familiar voices from inside. "Jessica, don't be sad. That kind of man isn't worth it. As long as you come back, I'll arrange a job for you here. Don't worry, nobody will say anything. We'll be like before." Robert Davis's voice was slightly trembling, full of heartache. "Robert. Commander Davis, how can it be the same? You're married now, and even though I broke up, everyone in the town/community knows I was with Li Feng. They'll talk." Before she finished, Robert Davis quickly stepped forward to comfort her. "They won't. I absolutely won't let anyone talk about you." Hearing this, my heart ached. When I was attacked by rumors, Robert Davis always told me to stay home and not go out, and over time, people would naturally forget. But now, when it came to Jessica Miller, he couldn't bear for her to suffer even a little. So this was the difference between loving and not loving. Yet everything I had suffered was his doing. I suppressed the bitterness in my heart and prepared to push the door open, but the door opened from the inside. Seeing me, Robert Davis's previously raised eyebrows immediately furrowed, and his tone was a little flustered. Sarah, why are you at the old house? Don't misunderstand, Jessica Miller graduated from college, and I brought her back to stay at the old house temporarily. You two should have met before. More than met. When David Chin came to my house to break off the engagement that day, Jessica Miller stood by with eyes full of triumph and provocation. At this moment, I nodded expressionlessly, preparing to go in and get my things. But unexpectedly, Jessica Miller grabbed my arm. Sister-in-law, how's your job at the riverfront mill lately? You don't know how worried I've been about finding a job after graduating from college. Luckily, Commander Davis said he'd take care of it. I looked down at Jessica Miller's soft, tender hand, a stark contrast to my own extremely weathered hand. I remembered after we got married, my mother suggested that Robert Davis help me find a job. He agreed to my face but privately told me it would violate his oath as a soldier if he showed favoritism. That's why I had been working as a temporary worker at the riverfront mill all these years. Suppressing my feelings of grievance, I smiled and said, "That's great. If you need anything in the future, just come to your Commander Davis. He'll definitely go all out to help you." With that, I went to my old bedroom and found the marriage certificate. As I turned around, I saw Robert Davis quickly following behind me. Seeing what was in my hand, his face changed. "Sarah, what are you doing with the marriage certificate?" I replied expressionlessly, "Nothing, the hospital needs it to process the birth certificate." He visibly relaxed. Just as he was about to speak, Jessica Miller's surprised voice came, "Sister-in-law, you're pregnant?" I nodded, touching my belly. "Yes, 3 months." Instantly, Jessica Miller's face turned ashen. She quickly pulled Robert Davis's hand and walked aside. While he was comforting her, I took out the divorce agreement from my bag, flipped to the last page, and motioned for him to sign in the blank space. Robert Davis wanted to look, but Jessica Miller kept clinging to him. In the end, he signed without even looking. I took the documents and left quickly, completely disregarding Robert Davis's pleading look, wanting to explain to me. The night passed, and Robert Davis did not return home. But I didn't care at all. Instead, I took everything he had given me in the house to the black market and exchanged it for $50. Just as I came out, I ran into him and Jessica Miller walking intimately on the street. Seeing me, she immediately linked arms with him. "Sister-in-law, I was scared alone last night, so I asked Commander Davis to stay with me." "Don't think too much of it." Robert Davis immediately added, "That's right, Sarah, don't misunderstand." I nodded expressionlessly. Just as I was about to leave, a sharp pain shot through my belly. I distinctly felt the baby kicking me. Robert Davis, seeing me touch my belly, had a look of tenderness in his eyes. "Sarah, once I get Jessica settled, we'll be a family of 3 and live a good life together. Don't worry, I'll definitely be good to you and the baby from now on." For a moment, I was in a trance, as if I had returned to before I had exposed the lie. The next second, a runaway car/vehicle from the opposite side of the road swerved towards us. Immediately after, I heard Robert Davis yell, "Jessica, watch out." Bang! Amidst the world spinning, I was hit by the car and thrown to the ground, watching helplessly as Robert Davis shielded Jessica Miller in his arms. My vision went black from the pain, and my belly cramped. I looked down at the blood flowing between my legs, terrified and lost. I desperately called for help, but Robert Davis didn't move an inch from where he was, only focused on comforting Jessica Miller, who had merely scraped her skin in his arms. I laughed at myself mockingly. So this was his so-called being good to me and the baby. So cheap, so fake. With the help of kind passers-by, I was taken to the hospital. The nurse quickly arranged for a doctor to examine me. After a while, the doctor told me regretfully, the baby didn't make it. At that moment, the tears in my eyes flowed uncontrollably. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Robert Davis sitting by my bed, his face full of guilt. "I'm sorry, Sarah, it's my fault. I didn't protect you and the child." Listen to me, Jessica was closer to me, so I instinctively. Anyway, we're still young, we can have another child. I laughed sardonically. Robert Davis, I can never have a future with you. For the next 2 days, Robert Davis brought me meals on time every day. Most of the remaining time he spent by Jessica Miller's side, saying she was scared by the car accident. But I didn't care at all. That day, as soon as Robert Davis left for the military base/barracks, Jessica Miller appeared before me, her face full of provocation. Sister-in-law, Commander Davis is still the same as he was back then. Whatever I say, he'll do. I just casually mentioned that I didn't want you to be pregnant, and the next day you miscarried. Isn't that a coincidence? I suddenly looked up, trembling. What did you say? Otherwise, why do you think there just happened to be a runaway car at that intersection? And why did it crash directly into you? And why didn't Commander Davis even look at you when you were lying in a pool of blood? Because his goal was to make you miscarry. Jessica Miller's words fell clearly into my ears, one by one. I couldn't believe it. For her sake, Robert Davis would even kill his own flesh and blood. Yet just a minute before, he had been saying he would be good to me and the baby. Seeing my distraught appearance, Jessica Miller continued smugly, and 4 years ago when you were violated, Commander Davis was outside and felt reluctant at first, but as long as I shook my head, he tolerated that man doing it to you again and again. He even heard your breaking screams, but he didn't show any reluctance. Do you think a man like that could possibly have feelings for you? My body trembled uncontrollably. My mind frantically replayed the day it happened, me trapped in the barn/outbuilding, desperately crying for help. It turned out Robert Davis was right outside the door, but he watched as others defiled me. Just then, the nurse came to change my dressing. Jessica Miller left with a parting shot, "Commander Davis is mine forever," and hurried away. Suppressing my grief, I wrote a report on a piece of paper, stating that Robert Davis had deliberately swapped the acceptance letter and orchestrated my assault. The next morning, Robert Davis came to bring me food. I looked at him with extreme coldness. Robert Davis, you must be very happy that the child is gone. As you wished. He frowned, puzzled. What do you mean by that? Why would I be happy that my own child is gone? If it were before, I would have believed him. But now, no matter what Robert Davis said, I wouldn't believe it. I'm not eating. I'm being discharged and going home today. The procedures are already done. With that, I started to grab my change of clothes from the bed. Robert Davis grabbed my hand. Just as he was about to speak, Jessica Miller, who was passing by, called out to him. "Commander Davis, I don't feel well. Will you come with me to see a doctor, please?" Robert Davis hesitated for 2 seconds, then looked at me apologetically and said, "You go back first. I'll come see you later tonight," and hurried away. Watching his retreating back, I knew he wouldn't be coming home that night. Indeed, the next morning, as soon as it was light, Robert Davis's call came. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I stayed too late taking care of Jessica at the hospital yesterday, so I didn't go back. You know, I've always treated her like a sister, I have to take care of her." Before Robert Davis finished, I interrupted. "I know. You take care of her." With that, I hung up the phone. Close to noon, I took out the suitcase I had packed in advance. I placed the divorce agreement on the table. I also took out a piece of paper and wrote on it, "Robert Davis, I have left. Don't look for me. I heard everything you and Mayor John said that day. And I also know you've always loved Jessica Miller. This fake marriage for all these years, I don't want it anymore. You can be together openly now." After leaving the house, I mailed the report. Then I went to the county clerk's office to get my divorce certificate. After doing everything, I felt a sense of relief. I got on the bus to the station, heading towards that land I longed for. Robert Davis, who had hung up the phone, felt a sense of unease in his heart. He regretted not listening to Jessica Miller last night and staying at the hospital, and even crossing the line accidentally. Thinking of this, Robert Davis felt some guilt. After all, Sarah was his wife, and she had just miscarried, yet he had been fooling around with another woman in bed. Recalling Sarah's response on the phone just now, it seemed a little too calm. So Robert Davis quickly got out of bed, preparing to go home, but Jessica Miller hugged him from behind. But this time, he didn't compromise. Instead, he pushed her away and rushed out of the hospital. He ran into Mayor John, who was panting, with his granddaughter. "Robert, this is bad. Sarah overheard what I said in your barracks that day." Robert Davis was startled. He said somewhat incredulously, "How is that possible?" Mayor John quickly knelt down and said to his granddaughter, "Sweetie, tell Grandpa what you saw at the military base/barracks entrance the other day." The little girl replied in a naive, innocent voice, "Grandpa told me to play outside. I saw a woman with a lunchbox come not long after you guys closed the door. She stood at the door for a long time. Then, after standing at the door, then what? The girl thou. GHT carefully. Then the auntie cried, standing in the stairwell. And then the uncle and grandpa came out, and I went home." For a moment, Robert Davis couldn't quite believe it. He thought if Sarah had really heard, she wouldn't have been so calm. After all, whenever he thought back to those things from that year, he always felt a sense of guilt. But considering how unusual I had been these past few days, he felt a vague sense of unease in his heart. Seeing his stunned expression, Mayor John continued, "Robert, if it's true, go back and talk to Sarah properly. After all." But before he could finish, he saw Robert Davis running away at lightning speed. He thought, even if Sarah had really heard, he would definitely explain it clearly and ask for her forgiveness. But when he got home and habitually called my name, the only response was endless silence and an empty house. Robert Davis's heart began to pound. Unease and fear surfaced, until he saw a document placed on the coffee table. He opened it, and inside was the word divorce agreement. These two words completely stunned Robert Davis. Below the words, my name and his name were neatly signed. He couldn't help but believe it. Robert Davis suddenly remembered that 2 days ago at the old house, he was busy comforting Jessica Miller, and I handed him a document and asked him to sign in the blank space. It turned out it wasn't a birth certificate at all, but a divorce agreement. Following that, he noticed a piece of white paper next to it. He tremblingly opened it. It said, "Robert Davis, I have left. Don't look for me. I heard everything you and Mayor John said that day. And I also know you've always loved Jessica Miller. This fake marriage for all these years, I don't want it anymore. You can be together openly now." At this moment, Robert Davis's heart sank completely to the bottom. The cruel reality made his whole body tremble uncontrollably. So I had known everything all along. But I hadn't cried or made a fuss, just to give him a surprise on the day I left. "No, it's not like that, Sarah, it's not what you heard. Let me explain. I did do something wrong to you back then, but I really want to live a good life with you now." Robert Davis muttered to himself, as if trying to deceive himself, constantly wanting to explain to me. But the only response was the silence of the empty house. He slumped down on the cold floor, feeling dizzy and unable to get up. But he knew better than anyone what he had done. Out of the corner of his eye, Robert Davis stared blankly at the sentence on the paper, "You've always loved Jessica Miller. You can be together openly now." There was no happiness in his heart at all, only a piercing pain. For years, most of his heart had indeed been with Jessica Miller. Every expression, every smile of hers could stir the chords of his heart. And I was just a decoration he married out of guilt, without putting much effort into, yet somehow ever present. But now, looking at the once cozy home that was now empty, even the only photo of us on the wall was gone. All those past memories flooded into Robert Davis's mind. Memories of me cooking for him, me planting vegetables with him in the yard, me ironing his neat suits. These small memories now surged like a flood, cutting him to the core. He couldn't sit still any longer. He got up, grabbed his car keys, and drove towards the county clerk's office. 15 minutes later, Robert Davis questioned the staff with the divorce agreement in hand. "This is a military marriage. It doesn't count as a divorce without military approval, right?" The staff looked at Robert Davis, who was full of anger, completely bewildered. No, Commander Davis. The latest policy enacted at the beginning of this year states that if both parties voluntarily sign the divorce agreement, it is effective. Also, Ms. Sarah already picked up your divorce certificate yesterday. This is yours. We were about to mail it. The staff continued speaking, but Robert Davis didn't hear a single word. He picked up the divorce certificate and kept looking at it, muttering, "How could this be? How could this be?" But the clear official seal/stamp on it forced him to face the truth. At this moment, he was filled with regret, as if he had lost a precious treasure that was hard to come by. Then he ran to the Riverfront Mill manager's office. "Mr. Wilson, is Sarah here? I need to see her." In the office, Mr. Wilson was very surprised. "Commander Davis, Sarah resigned a few days ago." "What, didn't you know about this?" Just as he finished speaking, Mrs. Wilson, the manager's wife, happened to push the door open. Seeing Robert Davis, she was a little surprised. "Commander Davis, I saw Sarah at the hospital just 2 days ago when I was bringing my daughter-in-law her confinement meal. However, there was another woman there telling her that you deliberately caused her miscarriage. She looked quite sad. Is there some misunderstanding between you?" Hearing this, Robert Davis suddenly looked up, his tone sharp. "What? Who dares spread such rumors? Mrs. Wilson, do you remember what that person looked like?" Mrs. Wilson was startled by his tone and shook her head. "I didn't see her face, I just remember she was wearing a hospital gown. But she seemed to call you Commander Davis." Suddenly, Robert Davis understood. He turned and walked towards the hospital. On the way, the divorce certificate in his hand was crumpled out of shape. Just as he reached the hospital room door, he saw Jessica Miller and the driver from the accident 2 days ago standing inside. "You did a good job. The child is gone." As she spoke, she took out $300 from under the pillow and handed it to the driver. The driver said discontentedly, "Ms. Miller, we agreed on $500. Why are there 2 less?" Jessica Miller snorted, "I said I wanted her to die with the child, but you only managed to hit the child off. $300 is already good enough for you. Get out of here." Seeing this, the driver didn't say anything more, took the money, and left. But Robert Davis, hidden behind the door, was frozen stiff. So, that car accident 2 days ago wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. No wonder the car was initially heading towards Jessica Miller, but at the last moment, it suddenly turned direction. At this moment, a mix of anger, shock, astonishment, and other complex emotions flooded into Robert Davis's heart. Just then, Jessica Miller, seeing that everything was accomplished, hummed a tune and walked out of the hospital room, happening to make eye contact with Robert Davis. Remembering her conversation just now, Jessica Miller turned pale with fright and stammered for a long time before asking, "Commander Davis, why are you here? Didn't you say you were going home to be with sister-in-law?" Robert Davis stared at her with bloodshot eyes. "Why, are you afraid I'd come? Or are you afraid I'd know you deliberately had someone hurt Sarah? And that miscarrying wasn't enough, you even wanted her to die with the child. Jessica Miller, you were the one who said you had to marry David Chin back then, crying and begging me to help you swap the acceptance letters. Later, you said even then he still couldn't forget Sarah. When I found out you had someone violate her, I tried to stop it. But you cried and begged me, even mentioning your deceased Mr. Miller to move me, and in the end, I condoned your actions and ruined her reputation. Wasn't that enough? Why did you have to find someone to hurt her and even want her life?" Seeing that her plot was exposed, Jessica Miller retreated repeatedly in fear. But hearing how much Robert Davis cared about me, her face turned from white to red, then from red to green. She sneered, "Why did I have someone hurt her? It's because Commander Davis, you changed. You changed. So that your eyes were no longer only on me. You would be happy because Sarah was happy. You even looked forward to the baby in her belly. But why? Why was I defiled by David Chen and then abandoned by him? All of this should have been Sarah's, and Commander Davis, you are mine. With that, Jessica Miller stepped forward and hugged Robert Davis, saying softly, "Now I'm back, and no one can stop us, Commander Davis. Let's start over, okay?" But Robert Davis was awakened by her words. Yes, he had already fallen in love with Sarah during their time together. Her every expression and smile stirred his heart, and he even looked forward to their baby immensely. Thinking of this, he pushed Jessica Miller away, his gaze sharp. "I repaid Mr. Miller's kindness to my father 4 years ago. Now, the person I love is Sarah. Whether she forgives me in the future or not, I will stay by her side. As for you, let's never see each other again." With that, Robert Davis turned and left. Jessica Miller tried her old trick again, covering her chest and saying she felt unwell, but Robert Davis paid no attention and walked straight ahead. In the following days, he searched all over Oakhaven, but no one knew where I had gone. Finally, he fell ill. He covered his face and wept bitterly in the cold hospital bed, repeating, "I was wrong, I was wrong." After an 11-day journey, I finally arrived in the vast Northwest. Getting off the train and looking at the vast land before me, I felt a sense of rebirth. Just as I was about to get my luggage, a person wearing a cap and a jacket helped me. I remembered he was our leader, Thomas Brown. He enthusiastically carried my luggage bag on his shoulder and said to me, "Come on, I'll take you to see the scenery here. I guarantee it's different from your city." Then he took me to the high plains, which was like a huge oil painting. The golden wheat ears and the lush slopes seemed to blend together naturally. It was breathtakingly beautiful, Ma. King One feel refreshed, and all distracting thoughts vanished at that moment. In the following days, I diligently sowed seeds and cultivated the soil with my hands. I felt as if I didn't know tiredness. I was always the last one to finish work every day, only Thomas Brown would always help me carry the tools back to the barracks after work. In this way, rumors about us began to spread within the team. Some of the urban youth relocated to rural areas who had come with me from Oakhaven even spread my past story within the team. Suddenly, fear instantly overwhelmed me, as if I was back in that most helpless summer, with people crowding outside the door wanting to see me ridiculed. But Thomas Brown came to the living quarters and pulled me out of bed. "Listen, Sarah, this is not your fault. You are just an innocent victim." His deep, powerful voice seemed to strengthen me. Then he took me to a team meeting and spoke righteously. "There have been some unpleasant rumors circulating in the team lately. I want to strongly state here that no one is allowed to gossip behind people's backs. This is groundless harm to a woman. Also, I am 26 years old, single, and I like the new Ms. Sarah. I will pursue her, but regardless of whether she accepts or not, I will ensure that we maintain a proper distance and do not overstep. I also ask everyone to supervise me. If I violate this, you can punish me as you see fit." After speaking, he walked towards me determinedly from the platform. Since that incident happened years ago, all my classmates and friends had distanced themselves from me. Although they knew I was a victim, not a single one of them chose to stand up for me. Instead, they avoided me like the plague. Now, Thomas Brown and I had only known each other for 2 months, yet he was willing to stand up and defend me, not allowing others to gossip about me. This brought a long-lost warmth to my heart. In the following days, I worked even harder on the land, pouring all my sweat onto this piece of land. Thomas Brown still kept a not too close, not too distant relationship with me, but as long as I looked up, I could see his burning gaze. In this way, I gradually adapted to this busy and fulfilling life, putting everything related to Oakhaven behind me. But unexpectedly, a month later, when I finished work and returned to the living quarters, an uninvited guest walked in. I pushed the door open and saw a tall man sitting inside. His back was somewhat familiar, but I quickly dismissed the thought as impossible. As a commander, Robert Davis couldn't leave the province without orders. Just as I was about to ask who he was, the man turned around, revealing a face that was somewhat familiar yet somewhat strange. Until he spoke, "Sarah, why did you run off to the high plains without a word? Do you know how long I've been looking for you?" This familiar voice was indeed Robert Davis. But after only 3 months apart, he seemed like a different person, covered in fatigue, unshaven. He looked extremely haggard. Seeing me not speak for a long time, Robert Davis hurried over and tried to take my hand, but I shook him off. Why did you come? Robert Davis seemed not to have expected this reaction upon seeing him again and was momentarily stunned. After a while, he slowly spoke. Of course I came to find you, Sarah. I know you got a divorce certificate, but I don't agree. My signature on it was signed when I wasn't aware. I sneered. Robert Davis, does saying that matter now? Why don't you think about what you were doing when you asked me to sign it? If you can't remember, then let me help you recall. You were busy coaxing your childhood sweetheart. Robert Davis's face turned ashen after hearing this. That's still not a reason for you to trick me into signing the agreement. I was angered to the point of laughter and snorted. Robert Davis, how can you say something like that? Don't you know why we got married? The words I had over here. See him and Mayor John saying in the barracks flashed through my mind. I turned my face away, my stomach churning, waves of nausea washing over me. Seeing that I was uncomfortable, Robert Davis quickly supported my back, but he touched the scar on my back where I had tried to commit suicide after being assaulted. I pushed him away directly. I slapped Robert Davis across the face, yelling, I once thought you were here to save me, so for all these years of marriage, I always felt guilty towards you. But it wasn't until I heard what you said that I realized it was all a scam. With that, I lifted my horribly scarred wrist in front of Robert Davis, my eyes involuntarily turning red. Robert Davis, after I was violated by that beast, I wanted to die every day. I cut my arms over and over again, just to remind myself constantly of everything I had gone through. But I never expected it was all because of you. Jessica Miller said you were outside the barn/outbuilding and saw and heard me being humiliated with your own eyes and ears, yet you chose to ignore everything. Aren't you afraid of retribution? With that, I raised my hand and slapped Robert Davis across the face again. This time I used all my strength, leaving a bright red mark on his face. Robert Davis, everything I suffered is your doing. You stole my acceptance letter for Jessica Miller, ruined my reputation, and caused my mother to become gravely ill. Now you're here telling me I shouldn't have divorced you? Forget about divorce. If it weren't a civilized society, I'd tear you apart and feed you to the dogs. But you're not worthy. You're not worthy of me staining my hands with blood for you, and you're even less worthy of me ruining the rest of my life for you. Facing my accusations, Robert Davis's body kept trembling. He stammered for a long time, unable to form a complete sentence. Finally, he quietly lowered his head. I'm sorry, Sarah, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. I shouldn't have agreed to Jessica Miller's request to swap your acceptance letter, and I shouldn't have condoned it instead of stopping her when I found out she was looking for someone to violate you. You don't know how much I regretted it when I heard you crying heartbreakingly. That's why I married you and brought you home willingly after that, and I fell in love with you, Sarah, during our time together. As he spoke, Robert Davis took out the report I had mailed to the police station from his pocket. Sarah, after so many years, there's no evidence besides your testimony. The police won't convict him. As for Jessica Miller, I've already had someone send her back to her hometown. I apologize about the child incident. I only found out afterward that she was the one who hired the driver to deliberately cause your miscarriage. But my father owed Mr. Miller a life debt, so, don't worry, she won't bother us again. And I've already applied for a transfer from the military base/barracks. Soon I can live with you in the High Plains. Forgive me, and let's go back to how we were before, okay? In the past, such a life was what I longed for, but now, hearing Robert Davis's words made me feel disgusted. He was so selfish that he could ruin my entire life for his own benefit. Now he shamelessly came and asked for my forgiveness. He even dismissed Jessica Miller's attempt to harm me with a casual remark. Robert Davis's shamelessness once again shattered my bottom line. My eyes filled with ice, unwilling to waste any more words with him, I snatched the report from his hand. Let me tell you, Robert Davis, you and Jessica Miller are both animals. You lowlifes and manipulators deserve to be stuck together. And you are no longer worthy of standing by my side. You say there's no evidence? Fine, I'll find the evidence myself. In any case, this matter won't just pass lightly. I'll even go so far as to publicize the fact that I was violated, just to make you both pay the price for your crimes. No. No, Sarah, those cruel memories will swallow you whole. Evidence isn't that easy to find. Don't be so stubborn, please. Just as I finished speaking, the door behind me opened. Who says there's no evidence? I snapped my head around and saw Thomas Brown walk in, holding a small voice recorder. Commander Davis, everything you just said has been recorded by me. I think this should serve as evidence. Upon hearing Thomas Brown's words, Robert Davis's face lost all color. Soon, comrades from the team contacted the military base/barracks in Oakhaven, and Robert Davis was escorted back to the city. Thomas Brown and I also took leave from the High Plains team. This time, I was determined to make Robert Davis and Jessica Miller face the law. What I didn't expect was that upon returning to Oakhaven, I learned that Thomas Brown's siblings were all part of the legal system/authorities. They quickly helped me gather evidence, both testimonial and physical, from that year. We also learned from the man who had assaulted me that Jessica Miller had indeed paid him to do it, but Robert Davis was present the entire time. He wasn't the mastermind, but he was an accomplice. Mayor John also confessed to swapping the acceptance letters, and the hit-and-run driver was arrested immediately. Soon, with irrefutable evidence, 3 months later, Jessica Miller was apprehended in the countryside. For intentional injury, instigating rape, and other acts, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Robert Davis, as an accomplice, was also not exempt. After being discharged from the military, he was sentenced to up to 5 years in prison. When the sentence was pronounced, he turned and looked at me, muttering something under his breath. I knew he was apologizing to me, but I no longer needed it. Finally, all the criminals who had ruined my life were brought to justice. And I was going to start a brand new life, enrolling in the adult education program/college equivalency exam 1-year law. Under the latest policy, I boarded the train bound for the High Plains with Thomas Brown. Because it was crowded, he shielded me and walked ahead, turning back to look at me from time to time. This time, I didn't shy away. Instead, I bravely stepped forward and took his hand. I thought, this is what a lover should truly be like.